Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Cold Lasagna podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Lasagna, bringing you all the filthy casual takes on the world of sports for sports and non-sports fans out there like you and me. This is episode number 341, and in this episode, we are just 1 month out from WrestleMania 42. But before we talk about that, which is, again, still a little ways away, we begin our retro road to WrestleMania in this little mini series that I have done for quite some time now here on Very Cold Lasagna every year. And this year's retro road to WrestleMania begins with one that many consider as the greatest WrestleMania of all time. But anyway, yeah, this is a WrestleMania that many in the internet wrestling community, casual fans, analysts, consider as the best WrestleMania of all time and the greatest wrestling event overall. And that is none other than WrestleMania 17 or X-Seven, as WWE promoted it. We're here to talk about WrestleMania X-Seven here in this episode of the podcast as we dive once again into the coldest depth of the freezer. Grab that old icebox for this retro review. So here we are, beginning this retro road to WrestleMania with WrestleMania 17. And yeah, I don't really have much to say, but let's do it. Let's do it here, beginning this retro road. So with this WrestleMania in particular, giving you some little bit of background information, this was announced a year prior to when it took place on April 3rd, 2000. So just a day after WrestleMania 16, which, by the way, still one of the more disappointing WrestleManias, in my opinion, when I talked about it last year. But anyway, this was announced a day after WrestleMania 16. The WWF at the time, the World Wrestling Federation, which was the WWE that was known. But I digress. It was announced that WrestleMania 17 was going to take place on April 1st, 2001. No, that wasn't an April Fool's joke. Sorry to disappoint. But this took place at the Reliant Astrodome, which is now known as the NRG Astrodome for sports diehards out there. This took place. This was formerly home to the Houston Astros of Major League Baseball and the now dead Houston Oilers, now known as the Tennessee Titans. R.I.P. Houston Oilers. But anyway, this took place in Houston, Texas. And this was the first WrestleMania at the time to take place in the state of Texas. And then a bunch more were to follow. 50,000 tickets were sold when it went on sale 6 months later. And yeah, that was like pretty insane of how many tickets were moved on that day. And some other interesting factoids before we get started into the actual card. Paul Heyman, just a month after he ditched a nearly bankrupt ECW without him telling anyone, by the way. Paul Heyman moved over to the WWF at the time, and he was making his WrestleMania debut. And this was the only one that he did on commentary. And yeah, that was because Jerry the King Lawler, he left the company almost 2 months prior because of something that happened backstage. I forgot what it was, but anyway, Paul Heyman, he was doing commentary for this WrestleMania, and again, that was the only one that he did. And like I said, at the top of this cold open, many wrestling fans, whether it was casuals or in the internet wrestling community, and especially the engagement farmers and analysts, considered this WrestleMania as the best one of all time, and some people even consider this as the greatest overall wrestling pay-per-view ever. Now, as I look and going to review throughout this show in this episode, and I've honestly only seen 1 or 2 matches, or 3 in particular, from this card. Was I going to have the same overall opinion as the majority of fans or analytics when it came to that opinion of this being a GOAT pay-per-view? Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about WrestleMania X-Seven. And yeah, let's get started. So let's get into the match card. So we began with Sunday Night Heat, the pre-show on, what was it, MTV or whatever channel it was on, where it was trying to hype you up to, pay up with your credit card. What you're an adult or a kid is trying to give you that 1 hour to go to your cable provider to go and buy this very epic pay-per-view, or at least on paper. And then just minutes before the pay-per-view started, you started with the pre-show match on Heat, which featured X-Pac and Just Incredible, which was I think their name was the X Factor, and then went up against Steve Blackman and Grandmaster Sexy. I'm not sure exactly why they're teaming up, but hey, it's a pre-show match after all. Before the match started, Grandmaster Sexy made Steve Blackman dance, and it was pretty obvious that Steve Blackman obviously didn't know how to dance, as well as Scotty 2 Hotty, which was Grandmaster Sexy's partner. I'm not sure why Scotty 2 Hotty wasn't there. Maybe he was injured at the time. But this was a relatively quick tag team match that saw Steve Blackman. He was on a hot tag streak, but it ended relatively quickly because he and Grandmaster stopped X-Pac and Just Incredible's an enforcer, Albert. He was trying to interfere, but that was only to get distracted by the X Factors, their thing. And they hit a stereo super kick on Steve Blackman to win this match. So, it's your standard pre-show stuff. And then we get into the cold open, which I thought was pretty nice. It featured the top 3 matches and a couple other seem on paper, featuring the star power on this show. It was a nice opening package. And of course, we all remember the theme song of this show, which I'll talk about much later, because that was another thing that was very notable for this pay-per-view. So then we begin with the opening match of the whole main card, which featured the Intercontinental Champion Chris Jericho taking on the WWF Commissioner at the time, William Regal. Not a lot of whole setup for this match. And that weeks prior on SmackDown, William Regal beat Al Snow to become the Commissioner. William Regal was still, I think he was still relatively new at the time in the WWF. So anyway, Regal was the new Commissioner. And days later, he was confronted and insulted by Jericho because he wanted to shut the hell up on his first official day as Commish. So, in response, Regal abused his newfound power by putting Jericho in disadvantaged matches, like handicap matches against the Right to Censor and against the Dudleys in a handicap table match throughout that whole week. So as payback, Jericho gave Regal a new letter to learn. The letter P, by pissing in his teapot, literally, and cosplaying as Doink the Cloud to put him in the walls of Jericho. So that led to Regal using his authority again to create this opening matchup on the card for the Intercontinental title. I will say for this match itself, I thought it was a decent opener. It had a nice little story to start what was going to be a beefy WrestleMania. It did have a bunch of matches on the card. The Regal slow controlled a lot of this match by going after Jericho's shoulder that he injured 2 days prior on SmackDown. I thought the big highlight for me of this match was this double underhook suplex that Regal did on Jericho. It knocked both of them out briefly. Jericho did manage to rally back in this match after escaping the Regal stretch, which was Regal's submission finisher, albeit very quickly because, that's how the match was towards the end. It was a very quick finish. Jericho slapped Regal's very red chest. Jericho was slapping that chest very hard. The finish came with a one-hand facebuster, and he hit the line salt for the win to keep the title. Yeah, that was pretty much it. And that was the only knock I had on this match because, while it was still decent, it just ended up suddenly when it was starting to pick up. But I still thought it was good. I thought it was decently good, but again, it just ended so abruptly. Then we move on to our second match. Taz and the APA, the Acolyte Protection Agency, taking on the Right to Censor. All that's known about the why this match was taking place is that the right to censor was picking on Taz on SmackDown, who was doing commentary, and he was a part-time wrestler at this point. So Taz recruited Farouk and Bradshaw to help him out. That's pretty much all that's known about this match. So prior to the match, you get this pre-match speech from Bradshaw in their hangout place. He's trying to get Farouk and their manager Jacqueline a pep talk as they move forward with their match. This is a very quick matchup as both teams got into it before the match even started, and then officially started in the ring with Bull Buchanan rolling Farouk into the ring. But then there's not much else to talk about from this very frantic filler tag team matchup in which Right to Censor dominated Taz for half of it, and then Bradshaw dominated the rest of this matchup off the hot tag, and then finished off the Good Father. It wasn't the Godfather at the time. It was the Good Father with the clothesline from hell. And that was pretty much it. The Right to Censor was pretty much done after WrestleMania, but yeah, this is pretty much the beginning of the end for this group that was actually not that bad. It was like a parody of the Parents Television Council, and I thought it was okay. But other than that, not much else of substance here. Then we get into the WWF Hardcore Championship match, which featured the champion Raven taking on Kane. And well, it's the Big Show. So just like with the first two matches, again, not a lot of setup in this one, but it did have an intertwining angle with the other match that we're going to be talking about later. So for Kane, he saved Undertaker from a Triple H ambush during his hardcore title match, but he was also attacked by the champion at the time, the Big Show. After losing his own the hardcore title match against the Big Show, thanks to Triple H on an episode of SmackDown, Kane got payback by helping Raven win the hardcore title from Big Show on the next episode of Raw. And Kane was initially given a singles match versus the Big Show by Commissioner Regal, but he added Raven to this match to make it a triple threat for the hardcore title. So that's pretty much how we got to this point. And I gotta say, this is a very fun hardcore title match. Unlike the one from last year where it was just a complete clusterfuck, and for good and for bad reasons. But this one had a little bit more substance to it. And I'll just try to break down as much as I can with this one. And this was even before Big Show made his way to the ring. Kane started attacking Raven, and then, as expected, they were just beating up on each other in nearly every way imaginable. They just immediately went through the crowd and to backstage, and yeah, they were just beating all over each other. And two of the most memorable spots, not just for the hardcore title, but in Mania in general, happened all in the span of like 2 minutes or less. And that was underneath the Astrodome. First, they get into this office space, and Kane absolutely broke Raven. He threw him through the office window, and then Big Show threw Kane through the door, and then both Big Show and Kane went through the concrete wall of that office space, all within 2 minutes. No, not even 2 minutes, a minute in that space alone. And then once they got out of the office space, Kane decided to play Mario Kart using the blue drift, that blue purple drift, and he ran over Raven with the golf cart with the referee on Kane's golf cart. Yeah, that was some weird, crazy stuff at the time. So they all made their way back to the stage finally, after spending a crazy match, mostly backstage. And that started before Big Show even made it to the ring. And yeah, we got to the photo finish. Big Show lifted Raven to drop him through the stage floor, only for Kane to kick both of them and make them crash down through the stage. And then once we saw the debris, Kane decided to, you know what, YOLO. He he jumped down, hit a leg drop on the Big Show, and win the match and the hardcore title. So I really like this match. The first two matches, they were not doing it for me. Well, I'd say the opener was okay, but it was something I can move off of from very quickly. But this match, it was the first good one of the night. This was a good, crazy, wild one that brought some of the usual hardcore match action, but also had some of the best Mania spots that would end up being an all-timer. So I really like this match for the hardcore title. Some good stuff from all three men. So then we get to the next matchup for the European Championship as Test defended the title against Eddie Guerrero. But just like with the previous matchups though, not much build up for this one. And I guess that's an overlying theme for this WrestleMania. For most of these matches at least. Not a lot of build up. Mostly everything was thrown together. So there isn't much build up for this one other than Eddie challenging Test 6 days prior and attacking him after this non-title matchup he had against X-Pac. So we get to the match itself. Test, of course, he's using his size and power. He had the size and power advantage on Eddie, dominating a lot of this match until he got his leg trapped between the ropes. Pretty familiar with how things were with Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre at Clash of the Castle in 2024. So yeah, he got his leg trapped between the ropes on a counter from Eddie. Not sure if it was like a botch or something. But anyway, that allowed Eddie to take some control afterwards until Test hit this twirl whirl powerbomb for a near fall. And then, of course, you get the shenanigans from Eddie's crew to finish this match. Perry Saturn kept interfering while Eddie was distracting the referee. Test overcame that, though, as he hit the pump handle slam, and he gave them both big boots. But then Jesse's about to win the match. Here comes Eddie's other partner, Dean Malenko, to stop the 3 count. But then here's my big gripe, though. The interference was so blatantly in front of the referee that it was kind of like that thing when I talked about with the No Way Out review last month. Like, the referee was in clear position to see Dean Malenko pull Test off of Eddie Guerrero just as the 3 count was going to happen. Oh no, not Eddie. Yeah, it was Test. Like, how is the referee how the referee was like nearly out of position, but he was still able to see it like a dumbass. Like, come on, what are we doing here? It's like bad referee logic. So while the ref was dealing with Malenko, Perry Saturn tossed the title to Eddie Guerrero for him to knock out Test for the win in the European title. So despite the stupid finish, I thought this was still a solid matchup with both men. They still look good. The Houston crowd at the time was pretty invested in both guys, and that included Test. He got a very nice pop in his entrance. They liked Test, and at the time I actually found Test like when I do these retro reviews, Test could have been a nice big man push. Could have had a nice push as an upper main eventer or lower main eventer, which he did at the time back in late 1999. But unfortunately, he didn't do all that much that I can remember. Again, when I do these retro reviews, other than, the Un-Americans. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Meanwhile, for Eddie Guerrero, he wouldn't hold the title for that long as he lost it to Matt Hardy weeks later on SmackDown before he notably got sent to rehab the next month for his addictions, which is unfortunate. So then we get to our first real big matchup of the night, and that was Kurt Angle taking on Chris Invisible Man. After losing the WWF title to The Rock at No Way Out, Angle was scrambling for the next month to find an opponent for this show, and Invisible Man answered the call. So yeah, we get this one-on-one singles match between the two. Before the match started, Angle did Kurt Angle things by roasting the state of Texas, comparing them to what he'll do to Invisible Man, and that was to make him tap out. So they spent the first couple of minutes doing freestyle amateur wrestling. which, was not my thing, but I guess that's for some people, that's their cup of tea. But then after briefly having the crossface locked on Angle, Angle punched Invisible Man while Invisible Man was hashing out his frustrations to the referee about the rope break. And that changed the style drastically. And things really heated up from there. And that's what I liked about this match. Both men were suplexing each other, stealing each other's own submission finishes, and hitting each other pretty hard. This was a very physical match. And towards the end of this match, Invisible Man tapped out Angle with the crossface, but the ref suffered a ref bump, so he had to go revive him, and that allowed Angle to revive himself to hit the Angle Slam on Invisible Man for a close near fall. And then we got to the photo finish. Invisible Man reversed Angle's moonsault, which honestly Angle barely hit that during his career. And he hit the flying headbutt for a near fall. And then as he looked to lock in the crossface again, he got horse kicked in the dick by Angle. Again, this is the second straight match where you had a dumb dick ref seeing a dirty finish, a clear disqualification finish, happen right in front of him, yet he does absolutely nothing. He throws the rule book right out the window. So the dumb dick ref sees Kurt Angle horse dick kick Invisible Man, and Angle uses the deadly fruit roll up with the flavorful of tights to win this match. But again, despite the stupid finish, despite how much I want to knock that finish because of how the ref looked completely stupid, I like this very hard hitting physical match. Like both men were hitting it hard on each other. They were like beating up on one another. The only thing I do want to say is that they've had much better matches, and obviously the better finishes, because this one made like them much better, and the refs less stupid. So anyway, I do get that this was to set up future rematches, because they ended up having a trio of matches at Backlash and Judgment Day. But again, the finish was still stupid. Afterwards, you had Benoit attack Angle backstage during his post-match interview, and then he made him tap out and pass out again, which signaled the current continuation of their feud. Then we had the WWF Women's Championship on the line as Ivory, representing the Right to Censor, facing Chyna. There was some story behind this match, and that started back in November, actually. So Chyna at the time was one of WWF's most popular, if not the most popular, woman at the time for the World Wrestling Federation, and that was because, well, she was posing for a certain magazine. Let's just say it, Playboy. She was posing for the November 2000 issue of Playboy magazine, and they used this in a storyline for the Right to Censor. So she was feuding with the Right to Censor, notably with its female member Ivory. And then on an episode of Raw, they injured her neck with a pile driver, and they had their first match at the Royal Rumble. Chyna lost that match to Ivory after re-injuring her neck. I use in quotations because it's storyline, obviously, during that match. So Chyna was looking for a rematch throughout the next 2 months leading up to this, but Ivory would only do so if the contract had a hold harmless agreement, meaning that there'd be no legal action if Ivory injured Chyna's neck, or Chyna injured her neck herself. But on the other side, the contract also included that the rest of the stable would be banned from ringside for this match. So it's kind of fair game, I guess. But as for the match itself, nothing worthy, I guess. Maybe it's a little payback for the challenger, but this was a very quick match. Ivory went after Chyna's neck from the jump, but then Chyna went on to pretty much dominate the rest of the way, toying with Chyna on the way to finishing her off with the Gorilla Press Slam to win the WWF Women's Championship. Very quick, short squash match. But at the time, China was still very popular with the fans. So winning the title back and having the canon entrance again after for the second straight year, I guess it was nice. Unfortunately, it didn't last long because after a title defense against Lita at Judgment Day a month later, that would be China's last WWF match, as she soon left the company over a contract dispute and then left the WWF as a whole. And then, yeah, that left the title inactive until November. So you get a whole, 5-6 months with the title in limbo. And that was that. So now we get to a couple matches that are, in my opinion, some of my personal favorites coming out of this retro review. And that starts with this street fight, this family feud street fight, a McMahon family street fight between father and son, Mr. McMahon and Shane McMahon in a street fight. So this all began back in December, where commissioner at the time, Mick Foley, was granted full authority by Vince's wife and WWF CEO Linda to announce the Armageddon Hell in a Cell WWF title match at the namesake Armageddon pay-per-view back in December. And after that happened, Vince immediately demanded a divorce from Linda. So Linda was hospitalized because of a nervous breakdown, and then she ended up in this coma-like state where she was just staring off in the blank and just basically not doing anything. Vince was named the interim CEO, and he fired Foley because, well, he basically had power in his hands now. And yeah, he fired Mick Foley as the commissioner, while also getting into this highly notable on-screen affair with Trish Stratus, of course, for kayfabe reasons. So this kayfabe affair, again, was highly notable, but, for the wrong reasons by many in the IWC and sometimes by me. For the freaky things Vince booked in this, especially the infamous dog barking segment a month ago on Raw, where certain things happened in that segment for Vince to, I guess, prove a point because they were in the nation's capital at that time to send a message to the White House. I don't know. I'm still not sure what the message he was trying to send to the White House. But anyway, Trish was still loyal to Vince, even with the humiliation from him. But weeks later, Shane McMahon returned to the WWF and attacked his dad, with his reasoning being frustrated over the whole manipulation thing going on. And then 2 weeks before this match, obviously, there was the big notable acquisition that Vince acquired from the WWF, getting WCW, buying them entirely. And yeah, that big news broke. And Vince, being the businessman that he is, immediately injected it into this story. The week after the purchase, in a simulcast of both Raw and the final ever episode of Monday Nitro, as well as Vince was celebrating his victory, Shane McMahon appeared on Monday Nitro to reveal that he now owned WCW. So, yeah, that, I guess, spiced things up for this storyline and what was to come for the future, the near future. That very same night, Mick Foley returned to reveal that, as due to multiple contracts he signed before he got fired as commish, he revealed that he was named as the special guest referee for a Mania match, to which he chose for this one. And he also revealed that this would be a street fight. So that's how we got to this point in time for this specific match. So we get to the match itself. I do want to point out one thing. Why was Shane McMahon still using his dad's music? Like, how did we not get to this point in time of where Shane had his own, had that oh so iconic music of "Here Comes the Money"? How do you not have that song ready to go? Like, he should, like, when he came back, like, he should have had that. He should have had that already. Anyway, Also, before the match started, Shane introduced some of the WCW wrestlers that were legally able to be on screen. So yeah, they were in the skybox, and then Shane introduced them, but the cameraman caught them too late. So that was kind of awkward. And then he introduced this Mick Foley before Vince came out with Stephanie, and then the match was on. Shane went to town on his dad early on in the match, but unfortunately his momentum came crashing down because he went for broke with the big leap of faith elbow on the announce table, because Steph pulled their dad off the Spanish announce table right before Shane came crashing onto his dad. And then immediately afterwards, you get the big storyline payoff. Trish escorted the stoic Linda to ringside to watch the match firsthand, and you get the first of three things of the payoff. Trish checked on Vince, trying to help him out, but then you get the long overdue bitch slap to a roaring Houston ovation. Trish finally broke away from the long overdue abuse that Vince was giving her, and then Trish was fighting with Stephanie all the way backstage, with Mick Foley watching that action. You know what I mean? But Vince stopped Foley from wheelchairing Linda away and dragged his wife to the ring to sit and watch him beat up their son firsthand, while she was sitting in the corner, still stoic as heck. And yeah, Vince was beating their son with garbage cans in what became this chaotic match by this point. But then when he was about to hit his son with another garbage can, a third one, Linda finally rose up, still kind of stoic as heck. She finally rose up from her chair, and while she hesitated, she somewhat hesitated with Vince looking on, she finally gave him the deserved dick kick to her husband. And then that was the second phase. And the third phase was Mick Foley coming back in, going ham on Vince too for firing his ass. So phase 3 of the revenge was complete. And then it was now time for Shane to finish his dad off, going coast to coast, blasting his dad with the garbage can from one side of the ring to the other to win what I thought was a very sports entertaining street fight. Loved every bit of this match. It had a lot of story elements, even if it was very freaky for a lot of the build. But it was a very good culmination of a big McMahon family angle at the time. I really loved the payoffs with all involved, with Trish, Linda, and Mick Foley all finally getting together to get their lick back, their long overdue lick back on Stephanie, as well as Vince, and then Shane in turn too, because he was still kind of early in the phase of being back in WWF storylines, and the crowd at the time too was very into this match, and that made this match greater. Sure, they weren't the most physically imposing in this match, nor were they athletic, but hey, you can't go wrong with these kind of matches. And then this match was very important too for what was to come for a certain angle, for as how I felt about that, like when I first started this podcast. But anyway, it's set up for what was to come for a certain angle a few months later. But as for Vince, for some way he managed to recover. His night wasn't over yet, despite taking a big full of trash can to the face by his son. So then we move on to another chaotic match, and that was a WWF Tag Team title match between the champions, the Dudley Boys, the Hardy Boys, and Edge and Christian. And this wasn't just any ordinary tag team title match. It was a tables, ladders, and chairs match. This was a rematch of last year's very good triangle ladder match at last year's WrestleMania. And this was a rematch of the first ever TLC match at SummerSlam in 2000. Edge and Christian won both. And one of these teams that wasn't Edge and Christian were trying to get their lick back on E and C. But just like those two matches, though, there wasn't much of an underlying story. They did add Rhino, who was representing Edge and Christian, and the Dudley brothers Spike. And then obviously you have Jeff and Matt's manager Lita, you add them. She was still in the mix, so they tried to spice things up for that match. Having all three of their managers in the mix of things. So as with their matches, their three matches in the last year, it was chaotic as hell. I mean, what can go wrong, right? But there were so many spots in this match, too many of them. I have to narrow it down to the standout ones, okay? So it all started out with the Hardys double team on Christian from separate ladders. They jumped off of two separate ones. Jeff did a splash. Matt did a leg drop. And then later, Bubba Ray Dudley powerbombed Jeff onto a table-ridden Edge for the match's first table spot. Then you got the interference from Spike Dudley. He ran in and hit the sliced bread on Christian that's through a table outside. And then Rhino came in for Edge and Christian to hit the gore on the Dudleys. And then another gore, which was a spear named for Rhino. Yeah, he hit the gore on Matt Hardy through a table in the corner. And then here came Lita for Matt and Jeff. And she got her payback on Rhino with the Hurricanrana, and then KO'd Spike Dudley with a steel chair, but then unfortunately got the 3D from Bubba and Devon. And then the spots just get even crazier from there. And poor Jeff Hardy took the blunt of it. Jeff Hardy, he hit a swanton bomb from a 20-foot ladder onto both Rhino and Spike, who were laying on two tables. Ouch. And then minutes later, he was trying to get the tag team titles, but he was dangling above the ring. And then for those of you wrestling fans out there, even the casual non-wrestling fans out there that saw this on social media, y'all know what happened next. Edge jumping from a 20-foot ladder and spearing Jeff Hardy 20 feet in the air. Highlight of the match. And a big highlight for WrestleMania. Probably one of the biggest WrestleMania moments of all time. And honestly, I'd say a top. I don't know if I could say it a top 15. I'd say top. It's hard to say. It's hard to say if it's a top 20, top 15, because there's so many great moments in WrestleMania history. But this was a insane but great WrestleMania moment. With just how absurd and crazy Edge and Jeff took that spot. So then we move on. Rhino somehow was still alive. And then this, again, another insane spot. Sending Bubba and Matt off another 20-foot ladder. And they went crashing down of a 4-stack of tables before helping Christian get up to the ladder, get the titles. And Edge and Christian are once again the new tag team champions for the second straight WrestleMania. As expected, it was an absolute car crash from the start. And I'd say, in my opinion, they managed to outdo last year's triangle ladder match at WrestleMania. It really helped too when JR and Paul Heyman mentioned the story aspects of why Spike Dudley, Rhino, and Lita were all getting involved. And they weren't just there just for the sake of it, because each of them were getting hit by each other. I mean, not that way, but they were physically getting involved with each other, and they played a big role in this match. And they're taking absurd bumps from one another. Like I mentioned, my favorite spot goes to obviously Edge's big spear, but and a close second has to be the spot immediately afterward with Matt and Bubba Ray going through that 4-stack of tables. With the spear, though, it wasn't done yet at the time. It was like a very big, like 20-foot high spear that Jeff and Edge were willing to do. Yeah, it was very scary because it could have gone wrong, but it went okay. But it was probably physically grueling. And still, it ended up being one of the all-time greatest WrestleMania moments while also being a great segue to the match's final moments. So I loved every second of this match. It was probably one of my favorite matches ever. Like, and it's a great TLC match. Well, obviously it's just the second one. So all the others were very hard to top. And by this point in the show, I already had two matches of the night, like back to back, the street fight and this match. So it was going to be very hard to top because we only had 3 matches left. So moving on, we had the gimmick battle royal, which was pretty much like various legends with various characters in one singular match. You had your participants in the Iron Sheik, Hillbilly Jim, the Bushwhackers, Duke Dorisi, Doink the Clown, Nikolai Volkov, Tugboat, the Goon, not the Gooner, Earthquake, the Gobbledygooker, Brother Love, Michael Hayes. Oh yeah, you probably hated nowadays. One Man Gang, Kamala, Kimchi, Jim Cornette, and one of my favorite jobbers from that retro review I did of SummerSlam 1991 or 1992, Repo Man and Sergeant Slaughter. Before the match started, Howard Finkel announced a record attendance of 67,225 in the Astrodome before the match started. For this match, Mean Gene Okerlund and Bobby the Brain Heenan replaced JR and Paul Heyman for this match, just to give them a break. But it was not just that, but it was for this match to give it a theme, to keep up with the theme. For this match, Repo Man, Gobbledygooker, and Tugboat were eliminated in less than 10 seconds, and from there, the field shrunk very quickly, as it was down to about less than 10 in just about a minute in. That pretty much goes to show you that, yeah, this is a filler match. Doink the Clown got eliminated, and wow, I was surprised that the crowd got very pissed about it. The Iron Sheik ended up winning this by last eliminating Hillbilly Jim. And yeah, this was a very quick battle royal in less than 3 minutes. But hey, it served its purpose. It was like a cool down filler match to, give the crowd a little bit of nostalgia from the last 2 matches. And for a lot of the crowd at the time, yeah, again, it's a blast of the past. Post-match, Sergeant Slaughter came back in to pass out the Iron Sheik with the Cobra Clutch as the crowd chanted, USA, USA. So then now we get into the first of final 2 matches, starting with our co-main event, and that was The Undertaker taking on Triple H. This matchup, I'd say it had a little bit of backstory, and it goes back to the tie-in of the Kane's inclusion in the hardcore title match, somewhat. But for Undertaker's point of view, Undertaker took exception to Triple H's claim to beating everyone and him deserving the WrestleMania main event over Stone Cold, Steve Austin, and The Rock. And Triple H in response attacked Undertaker backstage, and he cost him a hardcore title match versus The Big Show, to which Kane saved Undertaker from Triple H, but only to get attacked by The Big Show. Later on, Undertaker was then arrested for trying to break into Triple H and Stephanie McMahon's limousine, and he received a restraining order on Stephanie. So the order didn't apply to Kane, and Taker asked him to chase after Stephanie and later took her hostage on an arena balcony, which I imagine that was probably scary as hell from Stephanie's POV. And then Commissioner William Regal was forced into giving Undertaker this match versus Triple H, and then again ties back into Kane's initial singles match versus The Big Show. Yeah, William Regal was forced into giving that match for Kane. So this would just not only be their first one-on-one pay-per-view match, but this would end up being their first of 3 WrestleMania matches in The Undertaker's streak. So this match itself, you had Motorhead performing Triple H's theme live in what would become the first of 2 times that they did that. But this first one was kind of notable because I think this is the one where Lemmy Climster, which is the lead singer for Motorhead, he forgot the lyrics on the back half of Triple H's entrance, and he just kept saying, "Time to play the game, time to play the game." I think he forgot the lyrics. in that half at the end of Triple H's entrance. So yeah, this match, Triple H dominated a good portion of it, and he was ready to take his Undertaker's head off with his signature sledgehammer, but referee Mike Chioda took it away from him. And while he was pulling it away, though, Undertaker reversed a pedigree and inadvertently catapulted Triple H into Chioda for a part of an obvious rep bump. But then he made the obvious rep bump worse by knocking Chioda out completely after Triple H kicked out of a choke slam. And, well, you know what that meant? Not just a rep bump, but no rules. So the match went, somewhat completely off the rails. And both men took the fight to the crowd and onto a makeshift scaffold where the hard cam was, where Undertaker chokeslammed Triple H off that scaffold, and he dove off of it onto Triple H, and he took him back to the ring and he hit the tombstone pile driver. But then he remembered that Mike Chioda was still dead for more than half of this match, and he needed to revive Mike Chioda. So then we get to the finish finally, where Triple H reversed the last ride powerbomb with a sledgehammer, hitting Undertaker with it and making him bleed. But while he was trying to cut more of Undertaker's blood, Taker caught Triple H with the last ride and won the match and got on to 9-0 at WrestleMania at the time. So this is a very solid match, but the problem was this was best remembered for the stuff that happened when Mike Chioda, the referee, was dead for more than half of the match. It's like, this is some odd booking. Maybe it was like, I didn't understand it. It's like, you had like two of the three matches that happened before it were like chaotic as hell, but it was such odd booking. Like they didn't want to make it officially make it a no disqualification match, yet you have a ref bump, and then you proceed to like go into the crowd and basically make it no rules. And it doesn't help when Mike Chioda was dead for more than half of it. So, yeah, this match was, And I thought like they would have much better matches like a decade later at WrestleMania 27 and 28, where they were actually like official rules, and there was better storytelling between the two. So this first one though was but at least they were like they were in there. They were two of the top stars at the time, so I guess it gets somewhat of a leeway. So then we get to the main event of WrestleMania 17, and this was a big one. This was a very big one at the time, and that was the WWF champion, The Rock, versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. So Stone Cold, he won the Royal Rumble back in January for a record third time, and it's been one that has not been broken to this day. While The Rock won the WWF title weeks later from Kurt Angle at No Way Out to lock in this match. By this point in time, in 2001, this was the second time that these two had fought at WrestleMania, but it was clearly much different. There's no corporation, no shenanigans, and most people thought it was going to be a straight up, who's going to be the best man standing. Now, initially, Vince and his creative team did try to spice things up to not make things too stale by inserting Stone Cold's real wife at the time, Deborah, to be The Rock's manager in order to create conflict. One of those instances, for example, came when Kurt Angle placed Deborah, who was checking on The Rock after he got the ankle lock. She received the ankle lock herself, and that led to Austin running out, and he gave both Angle and The Rock Stone Cold stunners. So you get that. And then they also had this notable sit-down interview with both Rock and Austin on why each of them wanted to win at WrestleMania. But then you had the Deborah angle dropped just 2 days prior to this match because maybe they thought it wasn't working as intended. So yeah, that's how this match gets set up. It's just now simply based on like respect, who's gonna be the last one standing and who wanted it more. And honestly, it was better that way. And I kind of, it was at least an attempt to try and not make it too stale, but it just wasn't working out. So many wrestling and non-wrestling fans remember this match for its great video package. You had Limp Bizkit's song "My Way," which was the theme song for WrestleMania 17. But how they utilized this in this video package was really great. It really highlighted both The Rock and Austin's like journey to this match, but just how great they were during this time period. Like The Rock was an ascending star for the last year and a half. Stone Cold was coming back from neck surgery. He also just won the Royal Rumble. So these two guys were at the top of their game, and we were gonna see who was gonna come out on top. So right before the match started, we got a surprise announcement that this match would be now contested with no disqualifications. So yeah, we got that announcement, as both The Rock and Stone Cold got rousing ovations from the Houston crowd as they made their way out. Although Austin got the loudest over The Rock, and probably the loudest of the night, if not one of the most loudest we've heard in wrestling history, for both his popularity and being in home territory of the state of Texas. So he clearly had the home field advantage over The Rock. But then we got immediately into the match because Austin didn't want to wait on The Rock, and as the two went to work on each other from the jump. And there was no clear advantage early on because the two tried to trade finishers, bashed each other into the announce table, fought into the crowd. But then Stone Cold hit The Rock with the ring bell. He made him bleed, and that's when he had the advantage. Stone Cold kept trying to toy with The Rock to open his busted head more until he himself got opened up when The Rock threw him headfirst into an exposed steel turnbuckle. So the advantage was back to an even playing field. Much later, you get this very nice but bloody visual of both men taking turns, locking the sharpshooter on each other. But again, still a very nice visual to have. But it was weird that there were still rope breaks in a no disqualification match. Like, why was that a thing back in the early 2000s? Is a no disqualification match. There's no rules. Why are there rope breaks? When Earl Hebner didn't even give either man a 5 count. Like, where's the logic? So anyway, after escaping the $1 million dream from Stone Cold, The Rock hit a Stone Cold stunner on Stone Cold for a close 2 count. And all of a sudden, the plot was starting to thicken. The suddenly fully recovered Vince McMahon came strutting down to the ring. And we soon began to figure out why exactly he was there. Because after The Rock hit the people's elbow, Vince dragged The Rock off of Austin when he was about to pin him for the win. And then the pieces started to come together on that puzzle. Rock was chasing Vince around the ring before falling victim to Austin stealing The Rock's finisher, the Rock Bottom, for a near fall. And then the puzzle pieces were continued to really fall into place because all of a sudden, in a shocking twist at the time, Stone Cold was asking Vince, no, not asking, demanding Vince to grab a chair. And not just that, Vince actually approved of Stone Cold's request. And not just that, he hit The Rock with the chair, with Stone Cold holding him up. Like, the Houston crowd was stunned. They were confused. But later on, yeah, The Rock hit the Rock Bottom on Stone Cold, and the Vince was distracting the referee though. So Rock dragged him back in, went ham on him, but then he was met with one of the most meme-tastic Stone Cold stunners on the biggest stage, but it was not enough for him to lose the title. But then you get to the final big photo finish, a brutal beatdown by Stone Cold. But did you remember it was a no disqualification match for the millionth time by Jim Ross and Paul Heyman? Anyway, Stone Cold hit The Rock in the head with the chair, but not enough to keep him down. So Stone Cold, desperate to win this title, he was just pulverizing, brutalizing Rocky with it, just relentlessly hitting the steel chair on The Rock. And then he went on to pin him for the 3 and won the WWF title in stunning fashion with his nemesis looking on in the distance and surprisingly counting the 3 along with the crowd and the referee. And yeah, WrestleMania ended with the sudden twist of the former forever enemies shaking hands with one another and sharing a beer. Wow. I mean, don't get me wrong. This is a very good a match. The very good rematch between the two from WrestleMania 15 with a lot of action and drama that never slowed down at the time, as well as, of course, you have the two biggest stars in their prime during that time period. Big time brawl. Both men put on great performances, especially Austin having a great story of his gradual aggressiveness, that frustration, and especially that desperation throughout the match whenever he couldn't put The Rock away for good. And of course, yeah, The Rock too. Like, he never gave up until Austin put him out for good. Remember, the video package even told from Austin's perspective of how much he needed that title. Like, you saw the great look in his face too. But with all that being said, though, I really wonder how fans truly felt during that time about the heel turn, the big heel turn of Austin joining forces with this forever nemesis, Vince McMahon, who many consider to be forever enemies. I don't know. Like, were they that divided? Were they that disappointed? Were they that angry? I like to know, like, from the YouTube commenters, for the people listening on audio in messages. I really like to know. But I will say this, as a time traveling filthy casual, having watched this match a couple times, and well, now watching again for the retro review, like I didn't watch wrestling till 5 years after this match took place. You know, obviously clearly late, but you know, again, watching this a couple times, I can tell you that, you know, having watched a good amount of the Attitude Era retrospectively, I'm a little disappointed that they went this direction. Yeah, I really am. But I can tell you like some potential reasons as to why. Maybe Vince felt like that he did all he could with his rivalry with Stone Cold. Stone Cold maybe felt like his character was getting stale. His popularity was a little bit decreasing. So maybe both sides elected to change it up. Or maybe because the WF purchased WCW and the Monday Night War was basically over. So there was no need to continue the rivalry, or, you know, like, you know, have Stone Cold continue to beat on McMahon before it gets stale. I don't know. I still don't know the reasoning. But I can tell you that it still doesn't excuse the fact that there was no, in my opinion, no logical reason to throw out the Austin versus McMahon rivalry in the manner that Vince did. I just think that it was pretty evident that watching the ending of that match, that the Houston crowd either didn't like it or didn't know how to react to Austin turning heel. Because after the match was over, people were very confused about that handshake between Stone Cold and Vince. They were very confused. Hell, many years later, even Stone Cold himself said he regretted doing that turn. Like, really, he did. But I will Austin's heel turn in his heel run following WrestleMania, it did have initial promise though. He teamed with Triple H briefly with the 2-man power trip before Triple H got hurt, which honestly ruined the potential of Austin's heel turn. Because imagine if we got a heel Austin and a babyface Triple H feuding with each other, and then Austin kind of saved the heel turn with this funny comedy sketches with Vince and Kurt Angle. I really like those segments. But at the same time, though, again, there's still plot holes because He was teaming with the same man that ran him over at Survivor Series in 1999. And then Triple H did just beat him in the 3 stages of Hell match at No Way Out. So, yeah, Triple H, again, got hurt like just less than 2 months after WrestleMania. No, not even less than 2 months. A month after WrestleMania. And then there was no Rock either because, like, literally the night after this WrestleMania, he left for filming for the Scorpion King. And all that left for Austin was not much. All he had was Undertaker, Kane, and then you got Invisible Man and Chris Jericho. And then you had the invasion angle. So not much for Austin to work with. There's like no major protagonist. He was the main antagonist, but no one to counter for him. So there's nothing. And then also consider the fact that nobody still didn't want to boo Austin post-Mania. Even if he did heinous stuff like attacking JR or brutally beating up on any of his opposition or abusing people in the alliance. Like, nobody wanted to boo Steve Austin. So, in my opinion, this was definitely a really good match, but I just felt like the ending was ruined. This match was ruined by the ending that marked the slow beginning of the end of the Attitude Era. I'm not saying that this match ended the Attitude Era completely, but it was the slow beginning of the end of the Attitude Era in more ways than one. So overall, when you look at WrestleMania 17, do I think this was the greatest WrestleMania of all time? Well, based on the last couple of minutes of me talking about it, and just talking about this in the last hour or so, no, I do not. This was because for all the star power on this show had, half of the matches were just okay or very skippable filler that had no real substance behind why they were taking place, with the gimmick battle royal just being somewhat of an exception to cool down the fans from the back-to-back matches of the night. Also, when you look at things that happened post-WrestleMania or in the near future later on, Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit, Undertaker and Triple H, Stone Cold and The Rock all either had or would have had much better matches with each other. Even though they still had good showings here, but they would have they either had or would have had much better matches with each other. I will definitely say though, the matches of this pay-per-view, in my opinion, were Vince versus Shane, because of its big story payoffs. Even if it gets knocked down a few points for what happened later with Vince, at the end of the night with Stone Cold. And then the TLC match for the tag titles, like, you get those back to back. Those are the big matches of the night for me, like, easily. So at the end of the day, one more thing to add. Like, again, this is the beginning of the end for WWE's best period in their one of WWE's best periods in their history, because after this, the disappointing invasion angle began for much of the later part of the year, because many of their guys like Triple H, Invisible Man, and others, they completely missed it due to injury, or in the case of the top WCW guys, they were under AOL Time Warner contract. And then the mixed reactions to Stone Cold's heel turn, it drove away a few fans from watching this period, at least from my understanding. And then there were a bunch of other factors that came into play. The Rock didn't come back until midway through the invasion angle, so because he was doing the Scorpion King, and yeah, like, it was the beginning of the end for WWE's best period and the slow, gradual decline of wrestling as a whole. So all in all, WrestleMania 17, I mean, it's still very good in my opinion, with the back half of the card, but I'd say it's overrated when you watch the first half of the card and see, like, it's not that good. And you see the impact of the ending that this pay-per-view eventually had on the wrestling industry, and slowly but surely for the wrong reasons. So yeah, that is my retro review of WrestleMania 17 and my opinions alone. And yeah, we can argue. We can argue about it in the comments below on, I think it's overrated. I'm again just in the middle overrated, not massively overrated, just overrated in that kind of sense. But yeah, we can debate about it in the comments below on YouTube, and send me if you're listening to this on audio. Send me a message there. But I like to hear what you guys have to say about WrestleMania 17, and yeah, let me know your thoughts on it as it turns 25 in a couple weeks. But that is it for this episode of the Very Cold Lasagna podcast. I have been your host, Dylan Lasagna, bringing you all the filthy casual takes for you sports and non-sports fans out there, closing the door on another retro review. And as we begin, once again, the yearly mini-series, The Retro Road to WrestleMania. But until we do another one of these, another retro WrestleMania review, and who knows which episode that will be. Until that time comes again, peace out.